But first, look, we're not going to expect much reason, much science from media personalities who've just bought the whole climate alarmism vibe, like Abby Chatfield, who was told that she and her musician boyfriend, they'd make lovely parents, but she responded, oh, she was very sad. Climate change means that would probably never happen. I mean, you can't bring a child into this melting world, can you? You know, it's just sick how politicians and journalists and activists and even activist scientists have spread so much fear that this poor woman and others like her are too scared even to have a baby. And it's terrible that this unreason has got so out of control, all these crazy new green energy schemes, that many Australians now face terrible energy bills. And that's in part on the Labor government, the Labor Party. And I know there are in fact smart people in that party, I know them, who must now be embarrassed and ashamed that the Albanese government is busy the most in spreading the fear and spreading unreason, spreading a new anti-technology Luddism. Now, nothing shows that better than the news today about our Energy Minister, global warming extremist Chris Bowen, who's over at the latest United Nations climate conference in Azerbaijan. Bowen has said no there to an invitation from the United Kingdom and the United States to join a global movement to speed up the spread of civilian nuclear energy plants, to invest more in research and to share technological breakthroughs. Bowen's no was actually a vote against science. Now, bear in mind that this invitation came from two left-wing governments whose top energy people signed this deal yesterday, saying nuclear power helped fight global warming by cutting carbon dioxide emissions, and it gave the world more secure power, particularly for industry. And they actually said in their press release, we expect Australia to join us soon, along with a number of other countries. Well, as if. Because everything they were saying about nuclear power is indeed true, but it's a truth that this Albanese government hates to hear. Or actually, correction, it hates you to hear. You see, our government is trying desperately to persuade you that nuclear power is so terrible, so expensive, so dangerous or whatever, that it must stay banned forever in this country. When, of course, almost all of our main competitors wanted. In fact, 31 countries at this climate conference have now signed a declaration to actually triple the amount of nuclear power to fight global warming. But our government says no. Our government is pretending that it alone knows better. Actually, it doesn't want to know better. It's got a know-nothing policy. It's saying the latest science and technology is of no interest to it. Here is the acting Prime Minister today.
The Australian government is not signing this agreement because it is agreement which goes to civil nuclear energy. That means nuclear reactors which provide energy to cities and to electricity grids, and we do not have that in this country. And so, as a result, this agreement is not relevant to Australia.
Isn't that shameful? You know, don't bother this government with any of this newfangled scientific or technological breakthroughs if it involves nuclear.
Australia is starting to become an international embarrassment under Chris Bowen and Mr Albanese. We can't achieve the outcomes that we want for our economy or for the environment without nuclear power.
Meanwhile, of course, ministers of this anti-science government keep babbling technological untruths that justify sticking to their disastrous plan to somehow power our economy with wind and solar power instead. Power which comes and goes with the fading winds or the fickle of the sun going down at night or with the clouds covering, falsely insisting that this power is so cheap, again today.
The sun doesn't send an invoice, the wind doesn't ask you to pay.
That is so childishly misleading, so dishonest. Andrew Leigh is an academic in the past. He should be ashamed of himself. Look, coal in the ground, Andrew, doesn't send you a bill either. Uranium isn't popping a little bill in your letterbox. What does cost is turning the wind or the sun or the coal or the uranium into reliable, steady electricity. And there's the cost, obviously, of hooking up, particularly all those solar and wind farms scattered all over the country. That's horrendous, that cost. That's where all these costs go. Now, just look at the science. It tells you that the more wind and solar power a country has, the higher its power bills tend to be, just like Australians are now finding too. The government's wrong. And the reason for this is simple. I mean, if you go solar and wind, you then need to pay for a second power system for total backup, for when there is no sun in the sky, or when the wind isn't blowing. Two systems. And what's more, the more wind and solar you have, the more you also have to pay for ways to make that supply match the demand. You know, it's going, ooh, 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 with the wind and clouds and everything. You've got to keep it stable. Make that flickering power stable. You have to create something that will call, they call it inertia. You have to create inertia in your system. Now, we get that inertia already from large rotating generators in coal-fired stations. They just spin stably, right? Wind and solar don't do that. So that's another huge cost, adding that to the system. I know this is all boringly technical, it's science, which is probably why, exactly why this government doesn't seem to include it in its plans. It doesn't do science. Its war on science is ridiculous, it's ruinous, and it means your power bills will never come down like the government foolishly, naively promised. Remember that promise? Cut your bills, $275 a year. Wondered how it got that wrong? But if you think that's bad, you just wait until we now get an electricity system which you can't even rely on to work. Click the switch, whoops, no power, not enough. How did we get to this point where we have got hundreds of years of coal under our feet, a third of the world's uranium, so much gas, oil? Only stupidity can explain what we've done to our power system. Only this new war on science.